Jathfor was done. Absolutely, completely and cosmically done with his job. As the overworked receptionist of Graxel Station's shadiest shipyard, he had seen it all: smugglers trying to sell stolen vessels, bounty hunters looking for parts, and desperate traders begging for last-minute repairs. But the worst? The endless parade of humans showing up with that same ridiculous confidence, thinking they could fix anything. And today, as he watched yet another one approach, he decided he had finally found his escape. Daniel Carter, a human mechanic covered in grease and wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big, strolled into the dimly lit office like he owned the place. Jathfor's 4 eyes blinked slowly in exhaustion. This one looked like the usual type: cocky, reckless, and probably too stupid to realize a bad deal when he saw one. Exactly what Jathfor needed. The human slapped a few credit chips on the counter. "I need a few parts. Engine stabilizer, fuel injectors, and a primary coolant relay, preferably cheap." Jathfor rubbed his claws together and gave a weary sigh. "Ah, human, I could sell you those parts, or I could offer you a deal of a lifetime." His mandibles curled into what humans called a grin, though on his species, it looked more like he was preparing to eat someone. Daniel raised an eyebrow, skeptical but intrigued. "Go on," he said. Jathfor gestured towards the dimly lit shipyard beyond the office. "There's an old vessel just sitting there, abandoned, forgotten. Perfect for a mechanic such as yourself. Instead of wasting credits on parts, why not invest in something bigger?" Daniel frowned. "A ship?" "A war-era frigate," Jathfor said smoothly. "Decommissioned, yes, but the hull is solid, and the system, well, they probably work. With your skills, you could fix it up in no time." He leaned in conspiratorially. "And between you and me, I'd be willing to part with it for, let's say, half the price of what those parts would cost." Daniel crossed his arms. "Why is it so cheap?" Jathfor coughed into one of his many hands. Well, you see, it does have a slight issue. The AI on board refuses to shut down. A minor inconvenience. Just a stubborn relic from the old war days." Daniel scratched his chin. "An active AI on a junked warship?" He glanced at the shipyard. There, half buried under years of dust and neglect, was the rusted hulk Jathfor was talking about. It did look like a lost cause. But a war-era frigate? That was high-quality engineering, even if it was ancient. If the AI was still active, that meant at least some systems were operational. The thought sent a thrill down his spine. If he could get it running, he wouldn't just have a ship, he'd have a legend. He turned back to Jathfor. "Show me." Jathfor grinned wider than ever. Hook, line, and sinker. They made their way through the yard, stepping over loose cables and past towering stacks of discarded ship parts. When they finally reached the frigate, Daniel placed a hand on the hull. It was cold, solid, and despite the rust intact. He liked it already. Jathfor pressed a control panel, and with a grinding noise, the airlock creaked open. Inside, the ship was dark, save for flickering emergency lights. Daniel stepped in cautiously, running a hand along the walls. Then, suddenly, a voice echoed through the corridors. "Unregistered personnel detected. State your intent." Daniel froze. The voice was cold, commanding. Not hostile, but definitely not friendly. Jathfor chuckled nervously. "Ah, there it is. The AI. It's harmless. Probably." He nudged Daniel forward. "Go on, introduce yourself." Daniel exhaled and cleared his throat. I'm Daniel Carter. Mechanic." "I'm here to Daniel Carter." "Mechanic." Access request denied. A sharp clank echoed through the ship as a security turret whirred to life from the ceiling, aiming directly at his head. Daniel slowly raised his hands. Jathfor took a careful step back. "Oh. Perhaps I should have mentioned the slight security features." Daniel shot him a glare. "You think?" The AI's voice remained cold. "This vessel belongs to the Dominion Defense Fleet. Unauthorized personnel will be neutralized." Daniel swallowed hard. "Right. Okay? Look, buddy, I'm not an enemy. I just want to fix you up. There was a pause, a long, unnerving pause. Then the AI spoke again. "Fix me?" Daniel lowered his hands slowly. Yeah. I'm a mechanic. Your systems are old and, let's be honest, you're falling apart. But I can repair you. Get you running again. If you let me live, I'll make sure you're in better shape than you've been in years. Another silence. The turret remained locked onto him. Then, something strange happened. The emergency lights flickered, and for a brief second, Daniel could have sworn the ship sighed. This unit has been alone for a long time. Daniel felt a grin forming. Then maybe it's time we fix that. The turret slowly retracted. Access granted. Conditional. Jathver clapped his hands together. Wonderful. Deal sealed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lunch break to take. Best of luck with your new home. No refunds, by the way. And before Daniel could say another word, the alien scampered off, leaving him alone with a warship that may or may not decide to kill him. Daniel sighed, placing a hand on the console. Well, buddy, looks like it's just you and me now. The AI's voice hummed through the ship. Welcome aboard, Captain. And just like that, Daniel Carter went from a simple mechanic to the owner of a forgotten war machine. Plush had been working as a receptionist at Yexon Dockyard for far too long, and he was tired of every single customer that walked through the doors. The constant noise, the endless complaints, the ridiculous requests, he hated it all. But the worst? Humans. Always looking for a bargain, always trying to fix things they had no business touching. And today, as he watched one approach the counter, he decided he was finally going to get rid of one problem in his life. The human, Noah Carter, was young, scruffy, and had that irritating mechanic swagger that all humans seem to have. He tossed a datapad onto the counter, his sleeves covered in grease. I need some engine parts. Cheap ones. His voice was casual, but Plush could tell he was serious. Plush's 3 yellow eyes blinked slowly. Ah, human, always fixing, always tinkering. He sighed dramatically, his tendrils curling in fake sympathy. But why waste your credits on parts when I can offer you something far greater? Noah raised an eyebrow, already suspicious. Like what? Plush leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. A ship. Noah snorted. I don't need a ship. Plush ignored him. Ah, but this is not just any ship. It is an old model, forgotten, unwanted. But with your skills, it could be reborn. He gestured toward the dockyard behind him. And I am willing to part with it for, let's say, half the cost of your repair parts. That made Noah pause. A ship for less than what he was about to pay for some scrap? It was a scam. Obviously. But humans were known for their ability to make something out of nothing. And if this was even half true, he could turn that wreck into something valuable. What's wrong with it? He asked. Plush did his best to look innocent, which wasn't easy considering his species had a face that looked perpetually guilty. Oh, minor issues. Some system malfunctions, a little outdated but structurally solid. He waved a tendril dismissively. And the best part? It already has an active registration. No legal troubles. No hassle. That was another red flag. No abandoned ship came without legal issues. But Noah's curiosity got the better of him. Show me, he said. Plush led him through the cluttered docks until they reached the ship. It was an old transport vessel, rusted at the edges but not beyond hope. Noah ran a hand along the hull. The markings were faded, but something about them felt off. He'd seen plenty of transport ships before, and this looked too reinforced. Like it had been built for something else. The moment he stepped inside, the ship's dim emergency lights flickered on. The air was stale, the consoles covered in dust. Then, suddenly, a voice echoed from the control panel. Unauthorized access detected. Noah froze. That voice was too advanced for a standard transport AI. Before he could react, the doors slammed shut behind him. Hey! He spun around, banging against the hatch. What the hell? Plush was already backing away, hands raised in mock apology. Ah, slight problem. Seems like the ship's security is still active. But don't worry. I'll, leave you to handle it. You're a mechanic, after all. And with that, he scuttled away. Noah turned back to the console. The ship's systems were booting up, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Then, the AI spoke again. "Welcome back, Captain Reynolds." Noah frowned. "Reynolds? That's not my name." There was a brief silence before the AI's voice returned. "Identity mismatch. Error. Error." The system flickered, then suddenly, a new line appeared on the screen. WARNINGSHIPDAT, a COMPROMISED. PURGINGFILSIN60 SE CONDS. Noah's eyes widened. Whatever was stored in this system, it was about to be wiped. His mechanic instincts kicked in, and he lunged for the console, fingers flying across the keys. "No, no, no, you're not deleting anything." The countdown kept running. 45 seconds. Noah bypassed the security lock, but the system was fighting back. This wasn't just a transport AI, this was a high-level encryption system. That meant this ship wasn't just a junker. It was hiding something big. 30 seconds. He dug deeper, looking for a way to force a data backup. His heart pounded as he found a hidden partition in the system, one that had been intentionally buried. He accessed it just as the timer hit 10 seconds. Suddenly, the ship's screen flooded with files. Logs. Coordinates. A list of names. And then, a transmission. To all surviving crew, do not return to known space. The corporation has turned against us. We are being hunted. Noah barely had time to register the message before the purge completed. The screen went dark. The only thing left was a blinking manual override option. He didn't hesitate. He hit the switch. The ship's engines roared to life. Systems that had been dormant for years suddenly surged with energy. The lights brightened, the cockpit monitors activated, and deep within the ship, something unlocked. Then, an external alarm blared. Incoming vessels detected. Noah rushed to the main display, and his stomach dropped. A fleet of black, unmarked ships was approaching fast. This wasn't just a junker. This wasn't just a scam. He had just reactivated something the galaxy wanted to stay buried. The ship's AI, now fully awake, spoke again, its voice calmer, more aware. "Noah Carter, you have engaged manual override." Noah swallowed hard. Yeah. And what exactly did I just override?" A pause. Then, the AI responded. "The last surviving warship of Project Revenant." The screens flashed as the enemy ships armed their weapons. Noah gripped the controls. "Well," he muttered, "looks like I just bought more trouble than I can afford." The AI's response was almost amused. Confirmed. Engaging defensive maneuvers. And just like that, Noah was no longer just a mechanic. He was a man with a ship the whole galaxy wanted dead. Vret hated his job. Every day, he sat behind a grimy counter at the backwater spaceport of Exel 7, dealing with traders, bounty hunters, and mechanics who thought they could turn scrap into gold. His long fingers tapped against the rusted console as he sighed for the 100th time that day. Then, just as he was about to close up, the door slid open, and in walked a human because, of course, it had to be a human. They always showed up looking for bargains, thinking they could fix anything. This one was a woman, dark-haired, wearing a grease-stained jacket, and carrying a bag of tools slung over her shoulder. She had that sharp, confident look that Vret had learned to hate. "Looking for parts?" Vret asked, not bothering to sound polite. Sarah Kim nodded. "Yeah. Need a new stabilizer core, some coolant injectors," and Vret cut her off with a tired wave of his hand. Bah. Always the same thing. Always fixing little machines. He leaned forward, his orange eyes narrowing. "Why waste your credits on parts when you can have an entire ship?" Sarah blinked, clearly suspicious. "A ship?" Vret grinned, his sharp teeth flashing. "Not just any ship. A fine vessel, abandoned, waiting for someone with your skills. And for the price of those worthless parts you want, you could own it outright. She crossed her arms. What's wrong with it? Vret let out an exaggerated sigh, as if the question itself was exhausting. Nothing. Just old, forgotten, unwanted. Some minor system issues, but nothing a talented human like you can't handle. He gestured lazily toward the docking bay. It's right there. Go take a look. Sarah followed his pointed claw and spotted the ship. It was large, rusted at the edges, its paint peeled away by time. At first glance, it looked like an old civilian freighter, but something about its design felt wrong. The hull was too thick, the frame too reinforced for simple cargo transport. Her instincts told her this wasn't just any junker, but she was curious, and curiosity had always been her weakness. Stepping inside, she was met with darkness. The ship's interior was cold, silent, the smell of metal and time thick in the air. Then, as if sensing her presence, the emergency lights flickered to life, casting long, eerie shadows across the walls. She ran a hand over a dusty console, and suddenly, a screen blinked on with a burst of static. Unauthorized access detected. Sarah flinched. The voice was mechanical, but there was something off about it, too advanced, too aware. This wasn't a standard AI. Before she could react, the doors locked behind her with a metallic clang. What the hell? She spun around, pounding on the panel, but it wouldn't budge. Vret, still standing outside, chuckled nervously. Slight issue. But don't worry. I'm sure you'll, figure it out. He quickly backed away, disappearing before she could yell at him. Sarah turned back to the console, her heart pounding. The screen flickered again, displaying old logs, flight paths, mission records, classified data. Her stomach twisted. These weren't the records of a cargo hauler. They were military logs. Then the AI spoke again. Welcome back, Captain Vance. Sarah froze. I'm not Vance, she said slowly. Identity mismatch. Warning. Screens glowed, hidden compartments unlocked, and beneath the floor, she heard the distant whir of engines powering up. Whatever this ship was, it was never meant to be found. The screen flashed again, and Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. PROJECTNIGHT use terminated. She knew that name. Everyone did. Nightfall was a ghost story in the galaxy, a black ops fleet that had supposedly been erased decades ago. Ships like these weren't supposed to exist anymore. And yet, here she was, standing inside one. Then, alarms blared. External threat detected. Sarah rushed to the nearest viewport and saw a small fleet of ships approaching fast. Black, unmarked, heavily armed. No insignia. No identification. Someone had been watching. Someone knew the ship had reactivated. And now, they were coming to erase it again. The AI's voice came back, calmer this time. Captain, hostile forces incoming. Defensive systems offline. Recommend immediate action. Sarah's hands flew over the console. I am not your captain, but if you want to survive, you better let me pilot you. A pause. Then, the screens flashed. Manual control granted. The cockpit lit up, controls unlocking under her fingertips. The ship trembled as engines, dead for decades, roared to life. The dust in the air shook as power surged through the ancient systems. Outside, the enemy ships locked onto her. Missiles armed. Sarah gritted her teeth. Oh, hell no. She yanked the controls, and with a screeching groan, the forgotten warship rose from the docking bay like a beast waking from a deep slumber. The targeting systems flashed online, scanning the enemy ships, identifying their weak points. They fired first. Sarah threw the ship into a roll, dodging the missiles by inches. The AI calculated trajectories, assisting her movements as if it remembered how to fight. And maybe it did. Weapons online. Shall I engage? Sarah's lips curled into a grin. Do it. The warship's cannons, dormant for years, unfolded from hidden compartments and fired. The first enemy ship exploded instantly, debris scattering into the void. The others hesitated, clearly not expecting a dead ship to fight back. Sarah didn't wait for them to recover. She pushed the engines to full, breaking free of the spaceport's gravity well and punching into deep space. The enemy ship scrambled to chase her, but this vessel was faster than anything they expected. As the stars blurred around her, the AI spoke again. "Captain, your orders?" Sarah exhaled, gripping the controls. She wasn't sure how deep this rabbit hole went. It had been hidden for a reason. Someone had wanted it erased, and now she was going to find out why. With a smirk, she leaned back in the pilot's chair. "First order? Let's find out what else they lied about." And with that, the last warship of Project Nightfall disappeared into the stars alive once more. The spaceport was a mess of rusted ships, leaking coolant, and mechanics arguing over spare parts. It smelled like burned metal and cheap fuel, a place where dreams of space travel either began or died. For Ethan Cole, a human fixer with more confidence than credits, it was just another day. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and leaned against a crate, waiting for a shipment that was already 3 hours late. Then, as if the universe decided to test his patience further, an alien with slick green skin and too many eyes slithered up to him. "You look like a man who appreciates a deal," the alien hissed, voice smooth as oil. Ethan barely glanced at him. "I appreciate a working ship. You got one?" The alien's lips stretched into something that might have been a grin. "Oh, I have something much better. A ship beyond your imagination. And for a fixer like you, a steal." That got Ethan's attention. He turned to face the alien fully, his skepticism clear. "What's wrong with it?" The alien waved a clawed hand. "Bah! Nothing a human like you cannot fix. Just old. A few minor system issues. It just needs the right hands." His many eyes blinked in unison. "Come, see for yourself." Ethan should have walked away. He knew a scam when he saw one. But the thought of a whole ship for cheap? Even if it was half functional, he could get it running. And if it turned out to be junk, well, he'd flipped worse. So, he followed the alien through the maze of the docking bay, past ships that had been picked clean by scavengers, until they stopped in front of IT. It was bigger than he expected. The hull was battered, paint long since stripped away by time. It looked like an old cargo hauler, but something about the shape was wrong. The plating was too thick, the engines too overbuilt. Cargo ships weren't designed like this. Ethan ran a hand along the cold metal. "What's its registry?" The alien made a noise between a cough and a laugh. No registry. Not officially. But that is a good thing, yes? No taxes, no questions." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "And why is it abandoned?" The alien suddenly became very interested in cleaning his claws. Crew disappeared. Happens sometimes. But no worries. I checked, no ghosts." Ethan sighed, already regretting this. But he had to admit, his gut told him to keep looking. So, he climbed inside. The air inside was stale, but the ship still had power. Dim emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows. The cockpit was cleaner than expected, the panels surprisingly intact. Then, the ship's console lit up on its own. IDENTITYENOTRECOGNIZED. Ethan froze. The voice wasn't like any AI he had heard before. It was too sharp. Too aware. Hello?" He tried. "State your designation." He exhaled, glancing around. "Ethan Cole." "Fixer." There was silence. Then, a soft chime. The screens shifted, revealing data that had been locked away. Old flight paths. Logs. Military schematics. Ethan's blood went cold. This wasn't a cargo hauler. It wasn't even civilian. This was a warship and a damn dangerous one. The outer plating? Reinforced combat armor. The oversized engines? Designed for evasive maneuvers, not long hauls. And the missing crew? If the mission logs were right, they had never left. They had been erased. Then, another message flashed across the screen. PROJECTSPEC TERCLASSIFIA DSTEIT US terminated. Ethan's stomach twisted. Spectre was a name whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. A ship so dangerous that the government itself had buried every trace of it. If this was one of those ships, he had just stepped into something far, far bigger than he was ready for. The ship suddenly rumbled, and alarms blared. INCOMINGTHRE a TDE Ethan's head snapped toward the viewport. From the far side of the station, unmarked black ships were moving in fast. "Ah, hell," he muttered. The AI spoke again. "Ethan Cole, you have engaged with a classified asset. Do you wish to initiate defensive protocol?" Ethan didn't know what was worse, the fact that he was about to be attacked or the fact that he was seriously considering flying this thing. He grabbed the controls. "Yeah, let's do that." The ship came alive. Systems that had been dormant for years powered up in an instant. The engines roared, the weapons unfolded from hidden compartments, and suddenly the warship in disguise wasn't hiding anymore. The enemy ships fired first. Ethan yanked the controls, and the ship moved like a ghost, slipping between attacks with inhuman precision. The AI assisted his movements, adapting instantly. Then the weapons locked on. "Shall I return fire?" Ethan grinned despite himself. Hell, yes. The warship's cannons flared to life, and in an instant, the battlefield changed. The first enemy ship exploded, the second veered off in a panic, and the rest suddenly realized what they were up against. But Ethan wasn't planning to stick around. He punched the engines to full, breaking free of the spaceport's gravity well and launching into deep space. The enemy ships tried to follow, but the warship was too fast. As the stars stretched around him, the AI spoke again. Course plotted. Awaiting orders. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He was in way over his head. But at this point, there was no turning back. He stared at the screen, at the files that had been hidden for decades, at the ship that shouldn't even exist. Someone had tried to erase this warship, to bury it so deep that no one would ever find it. Too bad. Because now, it belonged to him. The space station's trade sector was always filled with the scent of scorched metal, engine oil, and the unmistakable stench of desperation. Merchants shouted over one another, peddling scrap parts and questionable rare finds, while scavengers haggled for anything that could keep their dying ships afloat. It was the kind of place where a sharp-eyed mechanic could either strike gold or get swindled into buying a death trap. Unfortunately for Callum Hayes, he had a bad habit of chasing bargains that sounded too good to be true. He had barely stepped into the market when a short, hunched alien with thin, wiry limbs and oversized goggles slid into his path. "Ah, you, human. You have the look of a fixer. A man who appreciates a deal." The alien wheezed, rubbing his clawed hands together. Callum sighed. "If this is about used thruster coils, I'm not interested." The alien grinned, revealing jagged teeth. No. Not parts, my friend. I speak of a ship. A bargain beyond your wildest dreams." Callum frowned. A whole ship? That wasn't something just anyone sold in a rundown market like this. "What's wrong with it?" The alien hesitated, his fingers twitching. "Nothing. Just, unclaimed. A small issue with paperwork, but the ship is in good shape. Functional. Ready for a new owner." Callum's gut told him to walk away. But his curiosity had already gotten the better of him. "All right. Show me." The alien practically bounced as he led Callum down a winding path of docking bays, past rusted hulls and derelict wrecks, until they reached Bay 47. And there, sitting in the dim light, was the ship. It was a little too sleek for a freighter, a little too armored for a civilian transport. The hull was worn but intact, its edges still sharp despite the layers of dust. The engines looked powerful, far beyond what any normal cargo hauler needed. Callum immediately knew something was off. "She looks military," he muttered. The alien let out a nervous chuckle. "Uh-huh. What is military really?" Just a word. Ships are ships, yes? Callum gave him a sharp look but stepped forward, running a hand along the metal. The moment he touched it, the ship responded. Lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the hull. And then, with a crackle, the main console inside activated on its own. A metallic voice echoed from the ship's speakers. IDENT, ITYSCANINITIATED. Callum tensed. That was not a civilian AI. That was military-grade security. The alien suddenly backed away, his wide eyes darting toward the nearest exit. Ah, you will love it. A real bargain. Enjoy. And then, before Callum could even curse at him, the alien bolted out of the docking bay, leaving him alone with the mysterious ship. Callum turned back, heart pounding. He knew he should leave. He knew messing with unregistered, military-style ships was a bad idea. But he had always been the kind of man who had to know. So, against his better judgment, he climbed inside. The cockpit was clean. Too clean. No signs of dust, no signs of a former crew. The seats looked barely used. The console glowed, screens flashing with coded data. Then, the ship spoke again. UNA, UTHORIZEDSCCSS. STATE, wide URDES, IGNATION. Callum hesitated. Callum Hayes? For a second, nothing happened. Then, a sharp chime. PROVISIONALCOMMANDGRANTED. His stomach twisted. What the hell did that mean? The screen in front of him suddenly filled with old mission logs, covert operations, blacked out locations, classified schematics. Then, one phrase stood out, bold and unmistakable. PROJECTVEAILST. A TUS terminated. Callum's mouth went dry. Project Veil was a ghost story. A Black Ops fleet that had been wiped from every official record decades ago. Their ships were never meant to be found. And yet, here he was, sitting in one of them. Then, alarms blared through the cockpit. WARNING. UNIDNT, IFIEDHO, ESEO, TIS, APAI, LACHING. Callum's pulse spiked. He turned to the viewport just in time to see a fleet of black, unmarked ships closing in fast. They knew. Whoever had been trying to keep this ship hidden had just realized someone had woken it up. The AI spoke again, disturbingly calm. Callum Hayes. Immediate action required. His hands moved instinctively over the controls. He had no idea how to fly a classified warship, but the system seemed to be helping him. The ship responded to his touch, its interface adapting to his movements like it had been waiting for a pilot. The enemy ships fired first. Callum barely had time to react before the ship moved on its own, thrusters kicking in, engines roaring to life. The controls pulled him forward, and suddenly, he wasn't sitting in some forgotten relic, he was flying a war machine. DEF, ENSIVES, YSTEMSONLINA. RET, URNFIRE. Callum gritted his teeth. Do it. The ship's hidden weapons activated, panels sliding open along the hull. The first enemy ship barely had time to register what was happening before it was blown apart in a firestorm of plasma rounds. The others hesitated. They hadn't expected this ship to fight back. Callum didn't wait for them to recover. He punched the engines, breaking free of the station's docking clamps and launching into deep space. The enemy ships gave chase, but the warship, his warship now, was faster than anything they had. As the stars blurred around him, Callum exhaled, heart pounding. The AI's voice returned, calmer this time. Course plotted. Awaiting orders. Callum sat back, trying to process everything. Someone had buried this ship for a reason. Someone had wanted it forgotten. But now it was awake again. And he was the one sitting in the pilot's seat. A slow grin spread across his face. Well, he muttered, that was one hell of a bargain. And with that, The warship, once a ghost, now a threat, once more vanished into the dark, carrying its new captain toward a destiny that could change the galaxy forever.